Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating, sometimes, bewildering world of Dogecoin.
That's right.
We've pulled together quite a stack of sources, everything from, Reddit forums and financial blogs, right through to academic studies.
Yeah, a real mix.
And they're all buzzing with predictions and analysis about this really unique cryptocurrency.
Our mission today really is to unpack why these Dogecoin predictions vary so wildly, what actually drives its price,
Right.
and what its future might hold, especially with big things possibly on the horizon like ETF applications.
Okay.
We'll look at everything from its meme origins, obviously, to its technological foundations. We want to give you a clear, informed picture without all the overload.
You've probably seen those charts, those forecasts floating around about Doge's future. What brain power actually goes into them, and how accurate are they really? That's what we're here to explore. Let's unpack this. So we're constantly seeing these Doge price predictions, and they range from like $1 all the way to over $30 just for this year alone. That's an astonishingly wide spread. What makes this predicted range so incredibly vast?
It's fascinating because you hear people talk about crypto being volatile all the time.
Right.
But maybe without full grasping what that means specifically for Dogecoin. If you look at its history, before December 31st, 2020, Dogecoin's all-time high was tiny, 0.0114.
Wow, okay.
And for 2 whole years, it just traded in this really narrow channel, never broke out. Its high was only like 20% above its low for 2 years.
But boring then.
Exactly. Then, January 2021, it breaks that old high. Just 1 month later, February, Dogecoin jumps to 7 to center.
Okay, that's a big jump.
That's a staggering 593% above the floor it held for 2 years. And then over the next 3 months, it grew another 1,000%, peaking at $0.72.
Whoa. Okay, so we're talking about something that barely moved for years and then skyrockets within months.
Precisely.
That scale of movement, a peak 6,000 times larger than the gap between the high and low in the bear market. Does that kind of extreme volatility, does it fundamentally change how you should even think about predictions for Dogecoin? Does it make traditional analysis almost pointless?
It absolutely changes the game. Yeah. This isn't just typical market ups and downs. It's a profound demonstration of speculative mania, really.
Why? FOMO.
Exactly. FOMO, fear of missing out, where collective belief just propels it way beyond traditional metrics.
Yeah.
So if you try to model the next run-up based on that 2021 surge, taking the recent bear market low, say around $1.06, and adding similar gains, well, you could project a peak of $4.10.
$4.
Yeah. And that historical pattern is the reason why these future predictions aren't just wide, but sometimes seems, completely crazy. They reflect the unpredictable power of crowd psychology.
So the expected range is just enormous.
It can be. While, $4.10 is technically a possibility based on past surges, predictions also vary wildly. $0.50, $1, maybe $2.50. It probably won't be below $1.72 if it's aiming for a new all-time high, obviously.
Yeah.
But the further up you predict, the less likely it becomes.
So it's less about pinpoint accuracy and more about understanding the sheer potential magnitude of these cycles. And speaking of cycles, the sources mention specific patterns too, right?
That's right. Yeah. One perspective we saw highlights that Dogecoin historically trends down, sort of squeezes into what analysts call a wedge pattern.
Okay, a tightening range.
Exactly. For months sometimes. And then boom, a huge pump. Then it repeats the cycle. And often during these pumps, it outperforms most of the market.
Interesting.
This cyclical nature is why some analysts are getting really optimistic, talking about maybe a Dogecoin supercycle.
It's fascinating how a coin that started as a joke follows these, seemingly distinct patterns. So when we look at the actual numbers, predictions for, say, July 2025 are just all over the place.
Completely.
Some say it stays between maybe 11 cents and 21 cents. Others see $0.24, $7.25. Then you have predictions of a 1,000% surge towards $1.60. And looking further out, 2030, one source boldly predicts a minimum of $28.
$28.
It definitely feels like for many analysts, the question isn't really if it goes up again, but when. Now, you almost can't have a conversation about Dogecoin without mentioning one particular individual.
Yeah, Elon Musk.
What's the real story there based on the sources?
Well, few cryptos are as tied to one person as Doge is to Musk. Our sources really highlight his profound and immediate impact.
Immediate. Okay.
Yeah. There's one detailed study looked at over 34,000 hourly observations.
Wow.
And it found Dogecoin consistently showed statistically significant responses across volatility, return, and trading volume directly linked to his tweets.
So real measurable effects.
Definitely. And what's even more interesting, maybe, is that tweets with Dogecoin keywords weren't just boosting Doge. They were linked to increased volatility, return, and volume for Doge, sure. But at the same time, the study saw decreased trading volume in Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Whoa, hold on. So his Doge tweets actually pull attention and maybe money away from the big players like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Temporarily, yes.
Yeah.
That's what the data suggests. A notable short-term shift in trader attention.
That's an incredible level of influence. It really underscores Dogecoin's sort of unique reliance on social media and these big endorsements for its price moves rather than, fundamental tech developments.
Exactly.
We've definitely seen grassroots stuff like Dogecoin to the moon create market action, but his influence seems like a whole different level.
It really is. And while, his support undeniably put Dogecoin on the global map, it also ties its fate to these unpredictable external factors, makes it super volatile, very susceptible to just one person's whims, essentially.
Right.
This dependence is actually why some people in the community have expressed frustration. We saw one comment saying, Musk ruined it.
Huh. Interesting tension there. The thing that boosted it could also be its weakness.
Precisely. It's that double-edged sword fame versus stability and sort of independent growth.
Okay, so beyond the charts and the tweets, there's also this strong cultural side to Dogecoin, isn't there? It just feels different.
Absolutely. Its journey from, just a meme to a mainstream crypto wasn't an accident.
Right.
Its community is incredibly enthusiastic, often quite playful, and they've been a huge driving force. They organize charity events, fundraising for clean water, sponsoring sports teams.
Yeah, I've seen some of that.
And it consistently reinforces Dogecoin's reputation as the fun, approachable crypto. There's one really striking example from our sources that illustrates this.
Oh, yeah.
A community member shared how Dogecoin literally paid their son's surgery.
Wow, that's powerful. It shows a very real world impact.
Exactly. It's easy to get lost in the hype and the numbers, but that human element, that sense of collective belief and actually helping each other, that's a really crucial part of Doge's identity.
And it seems like this cultural significance, this community backing, might actually be playing a role in bigger financial moves now, like this push for a Dogecoin ETF.
Indeed. And that raises a really important question. Could a Dogecoin ETF approval be a genuine turning point? Not just for Doge itself, but maybe for broader crypto regulations.
How so?
Well, you've got investment firms like 21 Shares, Bitwise, Grayscale, serious players applying to the SEC for a Dogecoin spot ETF.
Okay.
Doge is the 8th largest crypto right now. Market cap around $24.2 billion. So it's significant.
Right.
And because Dogecoin is technically classified as a commodity, this is key. It might have an easier path to ETF approval than some other altcoins. Commodity ETFs have a different regulatory framework.
Ah, okay. So that classification helps.
It potentially could. And if it gets the green light, it might just open the floodgates for other altcoin ETFs, especially ones with big institutional interest behind them.
So an approval could really legitimize not just Doge, but start a whole new wave for altcoins? What are the actual chances, though?
That is the big question, isn't it? I mean, Dogecoin still faces hurdles. Its meme coin reputation, that history of wild price swings. Regulators might still be wary. But despite that, the market seems pretty buzzed about it. One Bloomberg analyst put the chances at 75%.
75%, okay.
Betting platforms are a bit lower, maybe 64%. Some analysts are even more bullish, like 90% chance of approval by the end of the year.
90%. So real optimism there.
There is. Everyone's watching August 17th, 2025. That's when the SEC is expected to respond to the 21 Shares application. And, the success of the Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs definitely set a powerful precedent.
Right, that paved the way.
Many believe Doge is logically next in line.
It really does sound like an approval could be a seismic shift, not just for Doge's legitimacy, but for the whole altcoin market, bringing these assets closer to mainstream finance. Like the president of 21 Shares said, Doge stands for something bigger.
Okay, we've covered the hype, the culture, the potential ETF, but what about the actual tech, the foundation behind Dogecoin? Does it, stand up on its own? That's a really critical point for its long-term future. Dogecoin's blockchain is based on Litecoin's tech, which does mean relatively fast transactions and low fees.
Right.
So for small payments, it's actually pretty practical. That's a plus.
Right. Good for tipping, things like that.
Exactly. However, and this is the big but, if you look at the bigger picture, Dogecoin's tech development has been relatively stagnant.
Stagnant? How so?
Well, it largely lacks continuous updates. It doesn't have advanced features like smart contracts or, a thriving ecosystem of decentralized applications, DApps, built on top of it.
Unlike Ethereum or Solana.
Precisely. Those things are becoming increasingly standard in the competitive crypto market. So it really raises questions about its ability to truly compete long-term with these more complex, evolving projects.
So efficient for basic stuff, but maybe not innovating technologically. And what about its supply? That's different too, right?
Absolutely. Unlike Bitcoin, with its hard cap of 21 million coins.
Famous scarcity.
Exactly. Dogecoin runs on an inflationary model. There's no maximum supply. New Dogecoins are mined continuously. Essentially, yeah. Now, this ensures there's always a supply for transactions, which you could argue is good for a currency.
Okay.
But it also means its value gets steadily diluted over time, just basic supply and demand. This ongoing dilution could potentially limit its long-term price appreciation compared to scarce assets like Bitcoin.
So its value is often driven more by the hype in the community
than by intrinsic utility or program scarcity.
Yeah.
Which, for investors seeking stability, definitely makes it a riskier bet.
Makes sense. But you mentioned, amidst all this, there was a surprising take in the sources. Something connecting Bitcoin and Doge's future.
Yeah, this was really interesting. One commenter brought up a pretty provocative idea.
Go on.
They argued that Bitcoin mining is actually accelerating processor innovation, and that the data market from 2025 to 2030 is projected to grow massive, like 3 times the growth of the last 25 years. Their argument was essentially, data is the new oil.
Okay. Data is oil. How does Bitcoin mining fit in?
The idea is that the intense computational demands of Bitcoin mining are driving innovation in hardware and infrastructure needed to process vast amounts of data more efficiently.
Okay, I see the link.
And from this premise, the commenter made a huge leap. They predicted Bitcoin could reach a minimum of $1 million per coin by 2030.
1 million.
Potentially even soaring to $8 million. And then, they argued, this massive tide would lift Dogecoin, putting it at a minimum of $28 by 2030.
$28 again. So Doge's fate tied not just to its own merits, but to Bitcoin driving this massive data processing revolution.
Exactly. It's a completely different way to think about its long-term potential, riding the coattails of the entire crypto ecosystem's impact on fundamental tech infrastructure. Very outside-the-box thinking.
What a mind-bending connection. Wow. Okay, so ultimately it sounds like for Dogecoin to achieve sustainable growth, not just these boom and bust cycles.
Right.
It needs to somehow balance that fun origin story and community energy with more actual tangible utility. It needs to address the tech stagnation and find more use cases beyond just, internet culture and tipping.
That seems to be the core challenge, yeah.
What a deep dive. We've really peeled back the layers on Dogecoin today, from those wild price swings and the huge influence of social media to that unique community spirit and these big questions around its tech future and potentially its regulatory legitimacy with ETFs.
Hopefully, you now have a much clearer understanding of why those predictions can vary so widely. You've seen the historical patterns that drive its cycles and the really significant factors like potential ETF approvals, like tech development that will shape its path forward.
Right.
It's about getting behind the headlines, understanding the why, which gives you, that informed perspective.
So after hearing all this, what really stands out to you from our deep dive today? As you continue to watch the crypto space, maybe consider this provocative thought we touched on. Can a currency that was literally born from a meme truly evolve into a globally recognized, technologically advanced financial asset? Or will its unique, maybe volatile blend of community and hype always remain its most defining features?